The London sky was dark and silent, the city lights twinkling below as if nothing could disturb the peace of the night. Until Shay Weiss's phone rang, shattering the stillness with a sense of urgency that only comes in the dead of night. It was his head of engineering, a man known for his calm and composure, never one for late-night calls. Weiss answered, heart pounding, already bracing for the worst. "Sir, we have a problem with the 787S. A big one. It's not in the manuals, we think it's the frame itself." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Instantly, Weiss was wide awake, adrenaline surging as his mind raced through worst-case scenarios. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was Virgin's pride, the future of their fleet, a symbol of innovation and hope for the company's next chapter. A structural issue wasn't just a maintenance hiccup. It was an existential threat, one that could ground planes, shatter trust, and cost millions. The engineer explained, during a routine check, a technician found a microscopic inconsistency in the frame. Others soon confirmed it, and the implications were terrifying. A small team began investigating in secret, using a standard service check as cover, careful not to raise suspicion or cause panic among the crew. The findings were shocking, contradicting everything Boeing had promised and suggesting a flaw that could threaten every flight. The very material that made the Dreamliner revolutionary, its advanced composites, could be its Achilles heel, a hidden weakness in its DNA. Weiss listened, picturing the fleet, the passengers, the brand he was entrusted to protect, and the thousands of lives that depended on his decisions. One phone call had cast doubt over everything. Years of planning, billions in investment, and the very future of Virgin Atlantic. The conversation was brief, but the implications were massive, echoing in Weiss's mind long after he hung up. When Weiss hung up, the silence was heavy with the weight of an impossible secret, one that could not be shared, not yet. He knew this was the kind of crisis that could change aviation forever, a turning point that would be studied for years. The next steps would define not just his career, but the future of Virgin Atlantic, and perhaps even the reputation of Boeing itself. The clock was ticking, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Every second brought new risks, new questions, and no easy answers. Weiss stared into the darkness, knowing sleep was out of the question. His mind was already racing through contingency plans. The fate of 17 Dreamliners, and the airline itself, hung in the balance, with every passenger's safety on the line. He began assembling his team, preparing for the longest night of his life, knowing that every decision would be scrutinized by regulators, the public, and history itself. Every decision from this point would be scrutinized for years to come, with reputations and livelihoods at stake. The Dreamliner's promise was now a question mark, its future uncertain, its legacy hanging by a thread. Weiss realized, sometimes the real turbulence starts on the ground, in the boardrooms and hangars, long before a plane ever leaves the runway. The nightmare had only just begun, and there was no telling how or when it would end, and there was no manual for what came next. Only instinct, courage, and the hope that he could steer Virgin Atlantic through the storm. The problem wasn't a faulty engine or software glitch. It was in the Dreamliner's DNA. The 787's carbon fiber reinforced polymer fuselage was supposed to be lighter, stronger, and more durable than aluminum. But Virgin's engineers found a hidden flaw: composite fatigue degradation. Microscopic delamination was appearing in key structural areas, especially where the wings joined the fuselage. The resin binding the carbon sheets was weakening under normal operational stresses. Unlike metal, this composite decayed silently from within, undetectable by standard inspections. Boeing's tests predicted decades of structural integrity, but Virgin's real-world data told a different story. Their long-haul routes and harsh conditions accelerated the degradation. The risk, a catastrophic failure, years before anyone expected. The Dreamliner's greatest innovation had become its greatest vulnerability. For Virgin, this was a ticking time bomb at the heart of their brand. The dream was unraveling, one invisible fracture at a time. The future of their fleet was suddenly in doubt, and the world had no idea. The crisis began with one man, David Chen, a veteran technician with decades of experience and a reputation for never missing a detail. During a routine but thorough D-check on a Boeing 787, Chen noticed odd ultrasonic scanner readings near the wing box, readings that didn't match what he'd seen in hundreds of previous inspections. The maintenance computer insisted everything was fine, but Chen's instincts, honed by years on the job, told him something was seriously wrong. Digging deeper, he cross-referenced the anomalies with flight data and soon saw a disturbing pattern. Planes flying turbulent routes showed more pronounced issues, suggesting a systemic problem. When he raised his concerns through official channels, they were dismissed as overcautious. Unwilling to let it go, Chen decided to take a risk. He meticulously compiled his findings, documenting every anomaly, and sent an anonymous, detailed report to Virgin's head of engineering. The report triggered a secret internal investigation, codenamed Project Nightingale, bringing together a select team of engineers. A second 787 was quietly pulled from service for advanced scanning and in-depth analysis. The results were alarming: microscopic delamination and fiber stress, far beyond expected safety limits, confirmed Chen's worst fears. Chen's warning had uncovered a crisis no one wanted to believe. The evidence was now undeniable, and the implications were massive. Virgin's leadership now faced a terrifying reality, one that threatened the safety of their fleet and the reputation of the airline. The Dreamliner's flaw was real, and it was growing with every flight, putting countless lives at risk. One technician's courage and persistence had changed everything, forcing the company to confront the truth. The secret was out, at least within Virgin, and the company could no longer ignore the problem. Now the airline's leadership had to make a critical decision, one that would determine the future of the Dreamliner fleet and the safety of its passengers. The stakes had never been higher, and the world was about to find out just how much was on the line. The Project Nightingale report hit Shay Weiss like a punch to the gut, leaving him momentarily breathless as he scanned the pages. The data was clear: accelerated composite fatigue, no reliable fix in sight, and a ticking clock that threatened everything they'd built. Weiss immediately gathered his top advisors, engineering, finance, legal, knowing this was a crisis that demanded every ounce of expertise. The options on the table were brutal: go public and risk chaos in the markets, or work secretly with Boeing and regulators, hoping to contain the fallout. Financially, the loss would be staggering, threatening jobs, investments, and the future of the company itself. Morally, though, the risk of doing nothing, of gambling with passenger safety, was even worse, a burden no leader should bear. The debate was fierce: stability versus responsibility, reputation versus risk, with every voice in the room weighed down by the stakes. Weiss weighed the cost. What if they were wrong and the problem was less severe than feared? But what if they were right and disaster struck? The consequences would be unthinkable, both for lives and for the company. The Virgin brand was built on trust, innovation, and a promise to put passengers first, no matter the cost. In the end, Weiss made the call. We sell them, all of them, quietly. The decision was final, and the room fell silent. Virgin would walk away from its flagship fleet, sacrificing pride and profit to protect its passengers and uphold its values. The risk was simply too great to ignore, and the cost of inaction was a price they could never pay. The next challenge loomed: how to execute the plan without the world finding out, and without sparking panic. Weiss knew this was the hardest choice of his career, a decision that would define his legacy as a leader. But it was the only one he could live with, the only path that aligned with his conscience and the company's core values. The future of Virgin Atlantic depended on it, and so did the trust of everyone who ever stepped aboard their planes. Project Sunset was launched, Virgin's secret plan to sell all 17 Dreamliners. The cover story: a strategic pivot to an all-Airbus fleet for efficiency. The real reason stayed hidden. Virgin's team targeted cargo and leasing companies, not major airlines. Deals were struck quickly, at a financial loss, but with airtight legal protections. Within months, the Dreamliners vanished from Virgin's schedule. The iconic red tails disappeared, replaced by new paint and new owners. The world saw a bold business move. Only a handful knew the truth. Virgin had quietly stepped away from disaster. The 787 was Boeing's leap into the future. Composite fuselage, radical design. Airbus took a safer path with the A350. Composites, but on a traditional frame. Virgin's switch was a vote for reliability over revolution. The A350 offered similar efficiency, but with fewer unknowns. The crisis exposed the risks of pushing technology too far too fast. Virgin chose the known over the unknown. In aviation, sometimes evolution beats revolution. The lesson: innovation must be balanced with caution. Virgin's all-Airbus announcement made headlines, but few suspected the real reason. Analysts praised the move, rivals watched closely. Boeing, publicly gracious, was privately relieved the story stayed quiet. Behind the scenes, other airlines grew wary. Maintenance teams intensified 787 inspections, searching for hidden flaws. Trust between airlines and manufacturers was shaken. The era of blind faith was over. Now, it was trust but verify. For passengers, nothing seemed amiss. The Dreamliner remained popular, but insiders knew one airline had quietly dodged a bullet. The industry would never be the same. Virgin's transformation was costly but profound. The airline fast-tracked Airbus orders, retrained crews, and took a financial hit. But safety became the core of its culture. David Chen, the whistleblower, was celebrated internally. A new team was formed to stress test every aircraft, far beyond regulations. The all-Airbus fleet brought real savings and passenger comfort. Virgin rebuilt its network, leaner and safer. The real reason for the fleet sale stayed secret. But inside Virgin, integrity had become the new flagship. The airline had chosen conscience over convenience, and survived. Virgin's secret saga is a lesson for aviation. Innovation must be matched by skepticism and independent checks. Frontline staff must be empowered to speak up. True leadership means putting safety before profit, no matter the cost. Passengers shouldn't fear the 787. Aviation remains incredibly safe. Virgin's Flaw was unique to their operations. Other airlines may never see it. The system is designed to catch and fix problems. Choose airlines with strong safety records and modern fleets. The real comfort at 35,000 feet isn't just engineering, it's integrity. Behind every flight, there are people who take safety personally.